The compassion of the Good Samaritan. Hello and welcome. It's always a pleasure to have you here for another story filled with meaning, reflections, and lessons that can transform how we see life and the world around us. Today, we'll dive into one of the most remarkable parables told by Jesus, the parable of the Good Samaritan. This story is not just about an act of kindness, but a profound lesson on how love for others transcends cultural barriers, prejudice, and personal interests. Imagine a dangerous road, a vulnerable traveler, and the choices made by people to help or ignore someone in need. This parable not only reveals the human heart in moments of decision, but also challenges us to reflect on who we are in those moments. Are we willing to act with compassion, even when it requires sacrifice? In this video, we'll explore every detail of this powerful story. We'll discuss the historical context, the characters, and the timeless lessons it continues to teach. Above all, this is an opportunity to connect with universal values that transcend time and still resonate today. If you're looking for inspiring stories, deep reflections, and content that truly makes you think, go ahead and like this video to help spread the message. Subscribe to the channel for more stories like this and turn on notifications to be alerted every time we release a new video. Get ready, because the story of the Good Samaritan will move you, inspire you, and perhaps motivate you to make a difference in someone's life. Are you ready to join this journey of learning and transformation? Then let's go. During his ministry, Jesus often used stories to teach profound lessons and transform hearts. These stories, called parables, had the power to go beyond words, touching emotions and inviting people to reflect on their own lives. One of the most well-known parables is that of the Good Samaritan, which challenges not only religious concepts but also deeply rooted social and cultural prejudices. One day, an expert in the law, scholar of sacred scriptures, stood up among the crowd and asked Jesus a question. It wasn't just any question, it was an attempt to test him, to put him in a situation where his response could be used against him. He asked, "Teacher, what must I do to inherit eternal life?" Though it appeared to be a sincere quest for truth, the question was laden with dubious intentions. The expert wanted to measure Jesus against the standards of the law of Moses, likely hoping he would make a theological error. Jesus, in his infinite wisdom, didn't answer directly. Instead, he responded with another question, prompting the man to reflect. "What is written in the law? How do you read it?" The man, proud of his knowledge, answered by combining the central commandments of Jewish faith. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength, and with all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. Jesus agreed, "You have answered correctly. Do this, and you will live." But the expert, wanting to justify himself, was not satisfied with this answer. Perhaps he sought to narrow the scope of the word neighbor to make it easier to fulfill. So he asked, "And who is my neighbor?" This was a theological question widely debated at the time. Many Jews believed that neighbor referred only to their compatriots or, at most, to those who shared their religious beliefs. Foreigners, sinners, and certain groups considered impure were often excluded from this definition. It was then that Jesus told the parable of the Good Samaritan, a story that would challenge his listeners' deepest prejudices and expand the understanding of love and compassion. A man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho. Jesus began. The road from Jerusalem to Jericho was notorious for its dangers. It was a narrow route with winding curves surrounded by cliffs and deep ravines. The descent was steep, as Jerusalem was high in the mountains while Jericho was located in a valley. The barren and desolate landscape provided ample hiding spots for thieves and bandits. Jesus' listeners could vividly picture the setting. They knew stories of people attacked along that road and understood the dangers it posed. In the story, the man was attacked by robbers. They surrounded him, stole his belongings, and beat him mercilessly, leaving him half dead. He lay wounded, blooded, and abandoned by the roadside, unable to move or call for help. As he lay there, vulnerable and at the mercy of fate, a priest came along the road. The priest was a man of high standing, responsible for conducting temple rituals and interceding for the people before God. Seeing the fallen man, he had a choice, to help or to ignore. But the priest chose to pass on the other side of the road. He looked away, perhaps justifying his actions with practical reasons. Maybe he thought the man was dead and feared that touching a corpse would make him ritually impure, preventing him from fulfilling his religious duties. Or maybe he was in a hurry, with important commitments he deemed more urgent. Soon after, a Levite came down the same road. Levites were assistants to priests, tasked with duties in the temple. Like the priest, the Levite saw the wounded man but also chose not to help. Perhaps he hesitated out of fear, worried about the possibility of an ambush. Or perhaps, like the priest, he believed his ritual purity was more important than aiding someone in need. The actions of the priest and Levite would have discomforted Jesus' listeners. Both were representatives of organized religion, people expected to embody the values of the law. Yet, faced with a real opportunity to demonstrate love and compassion, they failed. Then Jesus introduced a third character, and this is where his story took an unexpected turn. But a Samaritan, as he traveled, came where the man was. The Samaritans were despised by the Jews. Centuries of animosity between the two peoples stemmed from historical and religious disputes. To many Jews, Samaritans were considered heretical and impure. Mentioning a Samaritan as the hero of the story was, to Jesus' listeners, a shocking idea. Yet the Samaritan saw the wounded man and was moved with compassion. He didn't hesitate. He didn't question whether the man was Jewish or Samaritan, rich or poor. He simply saw someone in pain and chose to act. The Samaritan approached the man, even at the risk of being attacked by the same robbers. He cleaned his wounds with wine, which had antiseptic properties, and applied oil to soothe the pain. Then he bandaged him, possibly tearing his own clothes for the purpose, and carefully placed the man on his animal. He took him to an inn, a place where travelers could rest. The Samaritan continued to care for the man through the night, ensuring he was comfortable and safe. The next day, before leaving, he gave the innkeeper to denarii by a significant amount to cover several days of lodging and care. He also made a remarkable promise: take care of him. When I return, I will reimburse you for any additional expenses you may incur. After finishing the story, Jesus turned to the expert in the law and asked, "Which of these three do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of robbers?" The expert replied, "The one who had mercy on him." Jesus then said, "Go and do likewise." This parable is much more than a simple story of kindness. It is a call to action, a challenge to live out love in practical and unconditional ways. The priest and Levite, figures of religious authority, represented a shallow faith, concerned more with rules than with people. The Samaritan, an outsider despised by many, demonstrated the true meaning of loving one's neighbor. A love that transcends cultural, social, and religious barriers. Jesus redefines the idea of neighbor. It is not just someone who shares our origin or beliefs, but anyone we encounter in need. He teaches us that true love requires sacrifice and action. This parable continues to resonate through the ages, challenging prejudices and inspiring acts of compassion. It reminds us that, in the face of suffering, the question is not who is my neighbor, but how can I be a neighbor to others? The road from Jerusalem to Jericho symbolizes life's journey, full of challenges and dangers. At some point, we all need help or encounter someone in need. May we, like the Good Samaritan, choose compassion even when it requires effort and sacrifice. Go and do likewise. We've reached the end of another powerful and inspiring reflection. The parable of the Good Samaritan teaches us that love for our neighbor goes far beyond words. It is expressed in our actions and how we choose to act when we encounter someone in need. I hope this story has touched your heart and encouraged you to look around with greater compassion, practicing kindness without expecting anything in return. Remember, small gestures can transform lives, and we are all called to make a difference in the world. If you enjoyed this video and believe this message can impact others, leave a like below to help spread this reflection. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you won't miss any of our stories, and activate the notification bell to be alerted whenever we release a new video. Thank you so much for being with us today. Keep following along, and see you in the next video with more stories that inspire, transform, and bring us closer to one another. A big hug.